Greetings, so welcome to your second classics video lesson, and this one is on the gods and goddesses in Homer. As you can probably see, I'm doing this one from college, so there'll be no interruptions by cats, I hope. So, what are we up to today? I don't normally do this aims and objectives thing, but just because it's there, what we're doing with this lesson is just giving you an outline of the gods in the Homeric world, a little bit about who they are and a little bit about what they do and how they might be different to your perception of gods and goddesses. Because I'm guessing there are not many Zeus worshippers out there, although we've had a couple before, so maybe I'm being presumptuous. Right. So this activity works well in class. I don't know how well it works as a video lesson, but we'll have a crack. Now, one thing to bear in mind, some of you will have a decent knowledge of the gods and goddesses of the Homeric world. Some will have no knowledge whatsoever. It's not a problem. You will catch up if none of this makes any sense, and if you can't guess things for this original quiz, again, don't panic, it's a bit of fun. You'll have a chance to expand your knowledge later on, and that goes for quite a lot of lessons. For the first couple of weeks, some people have studied the Odyssey and the Iliad and have got a good sort of simple understanding of it. Others have never done it. If you've never done it, don't panic. It happens every year. Normally about 50–60% of the class have never done it before, and they all catch up and they smash the exams. Actually, those who haven't done it before tend to do a little bit better, because those who've done it before are a little bit arrogant. They think, oh, I know it, whereas they know it at a certain surface level, and they don't go as deep as they should. So don't fall into that trap either. So the idea is I will flash up a god on the screen, and using your knowledge, guesswork, whatever it is, I'd like you to try and guess the god. We'll go through it quite quickly and see how many you can get. There's no need to write this down. This is just a little bit of fun to get you warmed up and used to the principle of gods and goddesses and some of the images that might be associated with them. So you'll see a picture. Guess the god before I tell you. Right, go. Who's this? There you go. Yep. Any ideas? Any ideas? You've guessed it. It is Zeus, king of the gods, and we can tell that because of the eagle that is sitting next to him. That's a key sign of Zeus, but also you can see in his hand what the ancient Greeks thought of as a thunderbolt. It looks a little bit like a cornetto, but it's not. It's a thunderbolt. So that is Zeus, king of the gods. Who's this? Any ideas? Yep, you guessed it. I'm sure it's Aphrodite, goddess of lust and sexuality, and a few other things too, but that's her real kind of core focus, as you can tell by her nudity. This is the statue is a Roman copy, but that's often how she's portrayed, with absolutely no clothes on whatsoever, but a little bit of artistic modesty in certain areas. Now, she's an interesting goddess. There's no real modern equivalent. Religions tend to steer very, very clear of sort of sexuality, but we'll come on to that later. So who's this god? Any ideas? You've guessed it, it's Apollo. You can tell by his bow. His bow is often used to send arrows full of plague, so Apollo is a god of disease and healing to a degree, and prophecy and all sorts of other things. The gods have a lot of different jobs. Apollo is often portrayed as a very youthful figure, so he doesn't have a beard in many images, unlike me with my beard, emphasizing my age, maturity and wisdom. Another thing that you will notice is Apollo has got tiny genitalia. That is not an accident. For the Greeks, that is a sign of moderation and control of your passions. So when you see these images of gods, you'll often notice that they're not packing, and that is deliberate and points to their control and civilization. Now that's a very important thing for the next course that we come on to, but an interesting point now, nonetheless, I hope. Who's this? You guessed it. It is, of course, Mars. Oh, rather Ares. Sorry, Mars is the Roman version. This is Ares, the psychopathic god of war. Not a positive figure, not someone you actually want to be associated with, particularly for many ancient Greeks. There's another better god of war who we'll come on to later on. So, who do we think this is? Maybe a bit of a clue. There we go, special effects and classics. The owl, this is the goddess Athene or Athena, the same thing, doesn't matter whichever way you want to express it. And she is a fascinating goddess. She is one of the most important goddesses in the Odyssey, and she's known for many things, but wisdom and strategy with some elements of trickery as well, and that's important because they mirror the main characteristics of our hero, Odysseus. So if you want a god or goddess to go to war with, it's Athene, the goddess of strategy and calculated war, rather than the raging psychopath, Mars. Oh, Ares, sorry, I'll always do that. It's the problem with teaching a Roman course and a Greek course. You cross over the gods, so try not to do that. Right, moving on. Who have we got? She's young, she's got a deer. It is Artemis, goddess of virginity and hunting. I'm sure you spotted that. She is known for protecting virgins from male interference, and again that's something that will be an important idea in the next course, not so much the Odyssey, but it's good to know. Who is this chap? Looks quite similar to Zeus. That's because he's one of Zeus's brothers. You've guessed it, it is Hades or Pluto, whichever you like. So he is the god of the underworld, a very awe-inspiring, fear-inspiring figure. He's not the devil, don't get him confused with the Christian devil, but at the same time, you don't really want the god of the dead thinking about you too much. And next to him, you've got Cerberus, his three-headed dog that guards the underworld. And who have we got here? Well, we've got Hades, and he is in the process of kidnapping Persephone, and Persephone's mother is in control of the seasons, and in theory, when Persephone, her daughter, was kidnapped, her mother, in a fit of misery and sadness, stopped summer and life, and it was constant winter, and the gods persuaded her to bring back spring and summer by going down to Hades and saying to Hades, look, we need a bit of a timeshare here, so let Persephone go back to the earth for 6 months a year, then she goes down into the underworld for another 6 months a year, and that's the summer and winter dynamic, if you like. Very good. So next, who is this guy? This is Hephaestus. He is the ancient Greek god of workmanship, of craft, of technology, if you like, and he plays an important background role in the Odyssey as the subject of some stories. But he's an interesting figure. He's very strong and he's very clever, but he was lame. He couldn't walk properly because Zeus, in a fit of rage, threw him off Mount Olympus. More of that when we read the book. Now, who's this stern woman? You've guessed it, it is Hera, the wife of Zeus, the goddess of marriage, and a long-suffering wife of Zeus, because Zeus was not known for his marital fidelity, and that Zeus's desire to sleep with many mortal women is the subject of many, many myths, some of which we'll go into. And it is, you're right, it is Mercury. You can tell by the winged sound. Oh, I've done it again. I've done it again. So this is Hermes. Mercury is the Roman the Roman god. So this is Hermes, the messenger of the gods. He's also the god of thieves and tricksters as well, but his role is primarily one of a messenger, certainly in the Odyssey. So that's why he's got his winged sandals, so he can deliver the messages of Zeus as efficiently and fast as he possibly can. Who is this? Well, this is Demeter. This is the mother of Persephone, and she is the goddess of agriculture and fertility. And you can see in her hand she's got a horn stuffed full of fruit and vegetables, and that's called the cornucopia, which is otherwise known as the horn of plenty. And for those of you who are big Hunger Games fans, that's what the cornucopia is in the thing that's stuffed full of weapons, and that's sort of where it comes from, along with a lot of the names of characters in Hunger Games. They're actually based on classical individuals. So classic is at the root of everything. Who's this one? I'm sure you guessed it. It is, of course, Poseidon, the god of the sea, and horse racing and earthquakes. So he is a powerful, scary god, and he is the brother of Zeus and Hades. Zeus is more powerful, but they are not far off in terms of power. Now, he's a very chaotic god, and many people do fear him as the god of the sea, and we'll come on to why that might be a bit later on. So, who have we got here? It's a tricky one. This is Iris. This is an almost sort of personal messenger god of Zeus himself. So a much more minor deity, and often just used to deliver Zeus's messages rather than the messages of other gods. Ooh, who have we got here? Well, it could represent a number of gods, but in this case it represents Eos, the sun. Ooh, what have we got? Ah, yes. Who have we got here? It's the guy on the left with the enormous jug of wine. That is Dionysus, a very wild party god who is associated with wine and pleasure and a loss of control, but also with savagery. Losing control and drifting away from civilization is an important thing to get to grips with when we're exploring the Greek world. And Dionysus is on that border a little bit. To the right, you can see he's got two female followers called Maenads, who are presenting him with the gift of a hare, and they are savage, terrifying, but also slightly curious figures for male Greeks. And here we have a cringy picture of the Muses. The Muses are these goddesses who inspire men to create all sorts of things. They could be works of art, poetry, epic, and as you notice from the beginning of the Odyssey, there is an appeal to the muse for inspiration. Who is this? This is Hyperion, the sun god, who in his chariot drives the sun across the sky, and Hyperion plays an important part in the Odyssey as well later on, though small. And this is the only picture I could find from a very old Star Trek comic of, you can see the guy on the right hand side blowing. He is the wind god Aeolus. Again, a small but important part in the Odyssey. And what does this represent? You're right, it's a river. This represents a river god, and also the concept or understanding that almost any natural feature in the ancient world has a small god associated with it, be it a tree, be it a river, be it a beach. The Greeks live in a world of gods. The divine is everywhere, entangled within everything. So, as we go through the next bit, which is a true or false thing, a bit of a chat about various gods and goddesses. There is a page in your workbook labelled the Greek gods, and using this PowerPoint and using a bit of research, if you want to, fill in the gaps, if you like. So what type of gods are they, and what function does that god serve? So Aeolus, for example, he is a minor god. He's not an Olympian. Now, the Olympians are that group of 12 major significant deities. Aeolus's function is god of the winds. So that it's just that kind of levels of understanding that you need. So when a god appears in the Odyssey, you know who they are and what sort of thing they represent. Because if a character talks about a god or is spoken to by a god, there's so often a connection. So if you're a raging psychopathic warrior type, Ares may well be the one to communicate with you. So you can often see, who by the gods that people are talking to or associated with, it highlights some of their fundamental literary characteristics. So as we go through the rest of the PowerPoint, using your own knowledge, using your own research, fill in this section of the workbook. Right, so let's have a quick look at some true or false about the various gods. Now, I don't think, no, it's not in order. In the book, we've put it in alphabetical order, so you'll have to jump around a bit. But you are all intelligent, motivated, and gifted scholars, so I'm sure you're capable of it. Cool. That didn't work. Oh, yes, it did work. Right. So, Zeus. Zeus is probably the most important god. He's king of the gods, so he is notably superior to other gods in the Odyssey. He has control over them to a degree, but he is not a complete dictator, as you've noticed from Book 1 of the Odyssey. He's unwilling, though perhaps not unable, to simply tell Poseidon what to do. It's a kind of, I suppose he's a bit like a medieval king, if you like. He's the most powerful figure there, but not completely and totally all-powerful. He's the god of sky, and he's the god of thunder. He's also the god of something extremely important called Xenia, Xenia, and that roughly translates as hospitality. Now, we're going to do a lot on that throughout the book. The Odyssey is arguably a story of hospitality. So that's a concept that we will explore inside and out, but just bear that in mind for the time being. Zeus is the god of hospitality. He's married to Hera, and as I've said before, it's not a happy marriage, but a quick true or false. What do you think? Zeus disguised himself as a swan, white bull, and shower of gold to seduce, if you're being kind, or rape a variety of women. What do you think? Does that seem likely that the chief god, the sort of pinnacle of religion and religious devotion, would do strange and unusual things like that? True or false? What do we think? You're right, it's true. And that points to quite a different moral picture for the gods of the ancient world. They are not like Judeo-Christian gods, if you like, who are, in theory, these sort of paragons of morality, who almost by definition can't do anything wrong or immoral. The gods of the ancient Greek world are much, much, much more human in their passions and outlook. Right, so on to the next one, Aphrodite. So she's the goddess of love and beauty and sexuality, and rather strangely, she's married to Hephaestus, the ugliest god of them all. So Zeus has a sense of humour. Being married to Hephaestus doesn't seem to slow her down particularly. She is frequently unfaithful, and that is in her nature. Although somewhat alarmingly, one of the people that she often sleeps with is her brother Ares, yes, it's a bit different for the gods in that sense. But true or false, Aphrodite came from the severed genitals of Uranos. What do we think? Does that seem likely? This goddess of beauty? True, absolutely. You've guessed it. So one of her birth stories, and gods often have a variety of different origin myths, is that her grandfather? Anyway, Uranos's genitals were sliced off and thrown into the sea, and in the sort of bubbling foam of the genitals and the waves, yeah, exactly, sort of fusing together, out pops Aphrodite, this goddess of love, beauty, and sexuality, and that's where you get the very famous picture by, completely forgotten, of Aphrodite in the clamshell. Cool. Right, Apollo. So, as we've talked about before, he's the god of light, sun, poetry, prophecy, sickness. He's another son of Zeus and another goddess called Leto. So, true or false, Apollo cursed a priestess to predict the future, but never be believed. What a strange thing for a god to do. Is it true or false? It's true, and the person in question is a prophetess called Cassandra, who Apollo fell in love with and offered her the gift of prophecy, which she accepted, and then Apollo appeared later on and more or less demanded that she sleep with him. And she knew she would lose her gift of prophecy if she did. In the ancient world, women who remain virgins are often allowed to keep quite male characteristics or male powers. When women have sex, they often descend into this sort of their feminine status is reinforced, and feminine in the ancient world is often associated with chaos, passion, and disorder. So it's often quite a kind of negative idea. Not always, it's more complicated than that, but that's a simple dynamic. So women represent chaos and passion, and men represent order and control, but it's more complex. So Apollo gave Cassandra this gift of prophecy, and then when she refused to sleep with him, he couldn't take his gift away, but he said, "No one will ever believe you." So Cassandra was there prophesizing away, knowing she was telling the truth, but nobody would ever believe what she said. And Cassandra is famous for prophesizing the fall of Troy, telling the Trojans that the wooden horse was full of Greeks, but they were ignoring her because of the curse of Apollo. So very frustrating. The question I normally ask is, would you like that gift? Would you like the gift of prophecy, even if no one would ever believe you? It's a tough one, I think, although everyone always says, "Oh, I'll just predict the lottery numbers and live a life of luxury and wealth." Well, possibly. Right, so Ares, as we spoke about, spoked? Is that a word? No, it's not a word. As we've spoken about before, Ares is the god of untamed war. So he's the rage, the death, the slaughter, the psychopathic and lunatic. He isn't calm, civilized, controlled warfare, which is the Greek ideal. He slept with his sister Aphrodite, as we talked about before, and he is the son of Zeus and Hera. But true or false, Ares was always on the winning side in war. God of war? False. Got you. Oh, sorry. There you go. Got you. No, Ares is not always on the winning side in war. In fact, notably, he is a keen supporter of the Trojans in the Trojan War, and the Trojans very much, as you will know from the work you did, beginning of summer, the Trojans very much lose the war, their city is wiped out. So he is not always on the winning side in war, partly due to fate, but also his rage and anger can often lead him astray. So he's a peerless individual warrior, but he doesn't have the discipline and self-control that the Greeks often demand in the same way that Athene does. So Athene, she's the goddess of law, wisdom, courage, and strategic warfare. So these are all unbelievably positive Greek traits. You know, in the Odyssey, she's probably second only to Zeus in terms of a sort of positive depiction. You know, we see the power of Poseidon, but that's quite negative. Whereas Athene is very well and favourably portrayed in the Odyssey and in the Iliad and other sources. You know, she's a very popular goddess. She's the daughter of Zeus and another goddess called Metis. But true or false, Athene was married to Poseidon. It's false. As we talked about before, female goddesses and female mortals often to retain certain characteristics such as prophecy or masculine characteristics such as wisdom and strategic warfare, they need to maintain their virginity and their purity, and that allows them to exist in the world of men. If they had sex and got married, they would descend into a kind of more traditional, passionate, subservient female role. Oh, God, okay. Yep, there we go. It is true. Artemis did kill men who saw her naked, most notably Actaeon, who was a very keen hunter. He used to spend his life walking through the woods with his dogs, hunting deer and boar and all sorts of other exotic animals in the ancient world. And one day he was hunting through the woodlands and he moved aside a branch and saw Artemis bathing naked and gazed far too long. Well, I think any amount of time is far too long to gaze at the goddess of virginity and chastity. Artemis saw him and turned him into a stag, a male deer, and he was hunted by his own beloved dogs who killed him and ate him as punishment for spying on Artemis. So, yes, it's true, don't spy on the gods when they're having a bath. Next, Hades. He's god of the dead and riches, and he's the brother of Zeus and Poseidon. And again, he's referred to in the Odyssey, although he doesn't play a major role, but you don't really want to be on his radar. And in fact, the Greeks rarely, if ever, mentioned his name because they didn't want to draw attention to themselves. But true or false, to speak to Hades, Greeks had to bang their heads against the floor. It is true. Should you want to speak to Hades, you had to pray by bashing your head against the floor, presumed to be in contact with the land, the earth, and go down into the underworld. But anyway, not that relevant, amusing nonetheless. Persephone, she's the daughter of Zeus and Demeter. She's the queen of the underworld and vegetation. In the sort of other thing with Guess the God, we talked about the story of Persephone. She's the daughter of Demeter, and her kidnapping by Hades explains the seasons. But true or false, Greeks refuse to say her name aloud. What do we think? True, yeah. Because of her bad luck, and again because of her connection with Hades, the Greeks did not want her name associated. Well, not associated, but they didn't want to say her name and sort of tap into the bad luck that surrounded her. Hephaestus, so he's the god of blacksmiths, fire, volcanoes, craftsmanship. He's married to Aphrodite. He had a limp, but true or false, he had an army of robots. It's true, yes. He has an army of automata, which is where we get the word automatic. So these metal robots who did his bidding according to Greek myth. There you go. Hera, she's the goddess of marriage, women and birth, and she is the wife and sister of Zeus. Incest is something that the gods do, and it's not the same as human incest in the Greek world. Human incest in the Greek world is absolutely forbidden and leads normally to execution. But the gods do play by different rules when it comes to incest and to a degree sexuality, so you'll have to put that to one side. But true or false, Hera was known for her kind and forgiving nature. It's false. It's absolutely false. Hera is known for her rage and fury, especially at women who Zeus has turned his eye towards. So there was one woman who Zeus loved called Lamia, the queen of Libya, and Hera sent her mad and turned her into a terrifying monster, and she then killed her own children, and Hera made her aware of what she'd done afterwards. So Hera is not a particularly forgiving person. But then if you were married to Zeus, to be honest, I don't know, maybe you can see her point. Hermes, so he's the messenger of gods, the god of thieves, boundaries, and the conductor of souls. So all sorts of different jobs there. He's the son of Zeus and a goddess called Maia. But true or false, the Greeks used phallic statues of Hermes to mark boundaries. So you have a statue of Hermes with his penis out, and that is the dividing line between your property and someone else's. Does that sound like the sort of thing the ancient Greeks would do? Yes, it absolutely is. So this is called a herm, and this is an ancient Greek sort of boundary statue, and that would tell you that you were moving on to someone else's property. Why do they do this? I don't know. I have no idea. Comedy value? Who knows? I'm sure an academic has got a very good reason why you've got naked Hermes as a boundary stone, but I don't know. So next one, Demeter, the goddess of fertility, agriculture and law. She's the mother of Persephone, and she had a fling with Zeus. But true or false, she stopped the season till... It's lucky you know the answer to this one, because I just can't say it anymore. So you know that this is true, I hope. Ooh, what's happened here? Ah, yes, there we go. So Poseidon, god of the sea, storms, earthquakes and horses, brother of Zeus and Hades. He had hundreds of children and lovers, both male and female. But true or false, Poseidon raped Medusa, she of the snaky hair. It's true, and it's a classic story, if you like, of the unfairness of the gods. So Medusa was a beautiful young woman who Poseidon decided that he fancied. She tried to resist his advances, but he was having none of it. So he raped her in the temple of Athena. Now, the temple had been desecrated by this act, and so Athena punished Medusa, not Poseidon, with her snake hair and made her revolting to all other mortals, until eventually Medusa's head is cut off by Perseus. So, not a great fate for someone who is fundamentally blameless and innocent, but that's the nature of the Greek gods. This story also is an interesting little bit of background, because the two gods who are in conflict with each other indirectly, and using Odysseus as a kind of a pawn in their conflicts, if you like, are Poseidon and Athene, and perhaps it goes back to this story. I think it's also important to understand what Poseidon and Athene represent in some ways to the Greeks. So Athene is order, strategy, civilization, law. Poseidon is still a very positive god, but there is the storm, the earthquake, elements of chaos to him. So, who's next? Iris. So she's another messenger god. She's a minor character, often sent by Zeus, and she's represented by a rainbow. And true or false, the word iridescent comes from Iris. It's true, and a lot of people don't know what iridescence means. If you look at a puddle and there's a drop of oil on it, from certain angles you can see that oil seems to be projecting the colours the rainbow in the puddle, and that is iridescence, and that comes from Iris, and she's represented by the rainbow. So there we go. Eos is the goddess of the breaking dawn. She opens the gates of the sun every day. And true or false, Eos was a titan? It is true. Dionysus, he's the god of wine, of ritual ecstasy, madness and theatre, and he's followed around by maenads and satyrs. But true or false, he turned a group of sailors into octopuses for trying to kidnap him. Strange thing to do. Did he? It's false. And it's a very naughty one. He actually turned them into dolphins, and there's a very famous pot of Dionysus and the dolphins. Now, Dionysus is an interesting god and is mentioned once or twice in the Odyssey, but an understanding of who he is probably more important for the second year. The Muses, so they're a bunch of goddesses who inspire learning, drama and poetry. The number of muses does change according to legend and history and so on and so forth. But true or false, calling a woman the 10th muse was a compliment? It's true, yes, absolutely it was, suggesting that she inspired you to great artistic works. So Hyperion, he was one of the 12 Titans, a physical manifestation of the sun, and he is driven by Helios in a chariot. Now, true or false, some scholars view the sun god as a forerunner of Christianity. It's true, so there's a lot there, and we won't go into it now, but there are certain similarities between Hyperion and various elements of Christian myth and legend. Aeolus, god of the wind, I couldn't think of a true or false. He's a minor character, so anyway. Right, oh yeah, river gods, they're important. Local deities confined to a specific place. The most famous river god is the river Scamander, who on the plains of Troy actually attacked the great warrior Achilles. And we do get an important little river god in book 6, just to bear that in mind. Anyone else? No, probably not. Oh, I overbought the graphics there. What's going on? Yes, okay, so have a little look at this clip of a sacrifice. If you are a militant vegan and are not keen on animal sacrifice, then I wouldn't watch it, but it is quite a good short clip from, I think, the series Rome on the nature of sacrifice. A key element of sacrifice to the gods is that you give something so that they give something back. It's much more transactional than modern religion, where we sort of pray to God to do what's right. In the ancient world, it's much more of a kind of business deal rather than a request for morality and justice, although that does happen in the ancient world. Okay, so that's to remind me that it's a spider diagram. You can do what you like. So some questions to answer. Because it's a video lesson, you'd better jot these down. How do the Greek gods differ from the Judeo-Christian idea of gods? Now, Judeo-Christian means the Jewish and Christian gods. But you could broaden that out to the Abrahamic idea of gods, which would include the Muslim idea of gods. And I think for the purposes of this activity, they're all actually relatively similar. So have a think about those questions. Question 3, what impact do you think the lack of an official text or religious hierarchy could have on the evolution of Greek religion? Again, just have a think, have a guess. Don't worry too much if you can't, but think about it. There's no priests in the same way that there is in Christianity. No formal hierarchy of priests leading up to an archbishop or pope, and there's no one religious text, so it's all sorts of competing stories. Do you think that makes religious war and conflict more or less likely? Up to you. So jot down some ideas on there. Okay, so this is referring to the summer work that you've done so far. So books 1 to 5 of the Odyssey. And I'd like you to do a pretty solid paragraph on each, and I want you to refer to the text using crystal clear examples. And this is very much your opinion, but you need to back these opinions up by a factual reference to the text. How concerned have the gods been with morality so far in the story? So, in my opinion, blah, 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 as highlighted by this event in book 1 or book 2 or book 3 or book 5, or whatever it is that you choose. And the second question, how significant have their interventions been? So just because a god intervenes, does it necessarily mean that it was important? Could a mortal not have solved the problem by themselves? Think about the nature of significance, though. Just by a god being with someone and speaking to someone, even if they don't do anything like save their life or give them a ton of money or whisk them up into the sky or something like that, does just simply being there start to convey characteristics upon them? Anyway, have a think. There are no right or wrong answers. It's very much your opinion. Ooh, okay, so don't worry about this. I will have hopefully seen all of you by this point, and so you'll be familiar with Teams, etc., etc. But do just keep checking Teams for homework as the day, time, week goes on. Cool, well done, and I will see you in the next class lesson, video lesson, etc., etc. Take